Mazzacane podcast. It is 4:01 on Tuesday, January 25th. Glad to be here. We are some messages coming in just as I go live, but that's okay. We're going to wait a few minutes, as we always do, to wait for people to log on. A lot of comments yesterday. Just good to be back. I was happy to be back yesterday. Hearing from most of you today, we'll talk about an article in the Connecticut Mirror that went over online sports betting and gambling and some of the issues that are related to that. I also want to talk a little bit about the stock market and stocks that I talk about and some of those issues as well, and the comparison that we can have between looking at the stock market, betting in crypto, for example, and betting in sports. And it's interesting as we look at some of the numbers, how similar some of those things are. So we'll give it just a second before everybody logs on. Mary, glad to hear you. Good to hear from you. Happy New Year. Glad to be back. I'll be honest with you, I was questioning whether to come on. My head is kind of pounding. About an hour ago, I don't know, something hit me. I don't know what it is. Just my head started pounding and a little nauseous, nothing too bad, but I don't want to miss. My goal starting this podcast now is not to miss days. And so I want to make sure I'm here. I'll do the best I can and we can have a conversation today. So what I wanted to talk about more than anything is I don't know how many people stay up on state news. Do we read the Connecticut Mirror every day? I read the Hartford Courant. The Connecticut Mirror tends to be pretty biased on things, so I hesitate to always read them. I like the Hartford Courant a little better, but I do read the Mirror as well. But overall, I try to get a rounded view. I start my day usually with Politico. I'll start all of my days with CNBC. I always start with CNBC. CNBC, to me, from a pure news standpoint, makes the most sense for a very simple reason. We have MSNBC, we have Fox News, we have bias in whatever media. All media has some level of bias. I have bias. I report on things that, for example, I tend not to report on religion because, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness and left. Religion is not my favorite topic. I have a hard time reporting positively on anything religious. So I generally try to avoid it. We all have biases. Bias exists. To pretend there's no bias is nonsense. What you can hope for is that if the bias is so well known, then you can make a decision. We know what Fox News' bias is. We know what MSNBC's bias is. CNBC is the same. Their bias is to make money. When they have guests on, their bias is to tell you things that will make you money. It helps them to do that. It helps their brand to do that, to be accurate and give a good forecast. So at least when you're getting news, whether it's about politics or business or world events, in the context of how do you make money, there's an incentive to be accurate. They want to build their brand as accurate purveyors of information that you can use to make money. So I like CNBC. Obviously, I trade stocks. I'm watching the stock market, but CNBC is my go-to. From there, I go to Politico. Politico gets a little too in the weeds at times. I don't really care the inner workings of the political parties are all the time, except for election season. So sometimes it's in the weeds, but sometimes you get a good feel for what may be happening down the road. And then I go local to state and look at usually Connecticut Mirror and the Hartford Courant. I don't read the Register. I don't read the News Junkie anymore. That just got crazy. So those are my go-tos. So the Connecticut Mirror had an article out, and everybody who watches this podcast with any history knows that online sports betting was a big deal for me. I'm not going to pretend that I ever placed a bet illegally, but let's say hypothetically there were people that would place bets illegally. It was happening all over the state. So the mentality I had was, it's happening, might as well tax it. Now, you're going to have to deal with people that get addicted to gambling either way. So I'd rather tax the revenue to a certain extent and be able to use some of that money to deal with problem gambling, and then also help the state fund whatever it is that it wants to fund. So if you open the Connecticut Mirror today, and the headline, in itself is biased. Connecticut tracks online gambling closely, but not problem gambling. So clearly the author is trying to tell you Connecticut is lacking in looking after problem gambling. That may be. But as you read the article, there's not a ton of people that are calling the gambling hotline that have an issue gambling. But we're going to go over some of these numbers. It says, compared to November 2020 hotline calls, this is the I have an issue gambling hotline. We're up 87% in November 2021, the first full month after Connecticut flipped the switch. One of the quotes here, Diana Good, who's the executive director of the hotline, says the new thing is people saying, I just lost everything yesterday because it was football Sunday. And so for the most part, the people who are calling in are college students or young men who typically did fantasy football, who have now gone to sports betting and are whatever. They have a sure thing or a sure bet, and they made a fortune, or they bet a fortune, everything they had on something they thought was a sure thing, and next it's all gone. So there's a story in here of a college student who his parents signed on to his bank account, saw it was empty, thought it was fraud, is going to the bank to report it, and he's like, oh, damn, I spent this money. It's not fraud. How do I tell them? What do I do now? Not a ton of examples of this, but there are some. So certainly there are some issues here. The problem and the issue that has to be made clear with sports betting, and it matches everything else, is that if you're good at it, you're good at it. If you're not, it's just fun, and you can overdo anything. But if Connecticut is going to take steps to rein in sports betting, why did it not say a thing when we have literally thousands of young, mostly men in their 20s, who have spent everything they have on crypto, in some cases lost it all. Everything they have on meme stocks, and in some cases lost it all. Last year, in the last year and a half, we saw stocks go absolutely crazy because people who know very little about the stock market all got together to make purchases. At the end of the day, people who buy and sell stocks know what they're doing. But crypto has become larger than anything ever imagined. And young men are losing fortunes on it. By the way, check out the crypto now. Let's look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin price. You can look up this if you want to with me. Bitcoin is 36,804, up a little bit today. If you look at the 1 year, it was 66,938. Lost $30,000 in value of 66. It was at 45%, gone. And there were people who bought it at its peak. Now stocks do that too. They go up and down, but stocks have a fundamental aspect to them. There's an underlying business. When you buy GE stock, you can see that it's making money or losing money. You can see what it's doing to invest for the future. You can see that it's going to have some headwinds like labor costs going up or cost of goods going up. You can analyze all of their past filings. There's an organization to make sure their filings are reasonably accurate. There's oversight to all of this. Crypto, there's none. There's no oversight. The benefit of crypto is that there's no records of it. There's nothing. It goes up only based on hype. And it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hey, we have this new money type mechanism. Banks can't control it. You don't have to go through banks or the Federal Reserve to get it. And if we get enough people interested in it, it can become a thing. It's like the pet rock. If you wake up one day and say, I'm going to take rocks, I'm going to put it in a box, I'm going to put a nice picture on it and call it a pet rock and put it on stores, it doesn't do anything. But if people somehow, for some reason, start buying a pet rock, as idiotic as it is, suddenly it has value. And if more people want a pet rock than you can provide, suddenly the value of that pet rock skyrockets. That's what crypto is. It's a thing that somebody said, this is cool. Let's get other people to say, this is cool. And it created a demand. And there's a million different cryptos out there. There's a ton of them. But buying and selling it is basically a crapshoot. There's nothing to analyze. There's no underlying business. There's nothing saying, here's future sales, here's future revenues, here's the headwinds, here's the labor costs. None of that when you look at a GE or a Costco stock or a Viacom stock, which I am a proponent of. You're just throwing money at something, hoping that there's enough people that want to throw money at it too. It's pure speculation. And that's fine if you're Mark Cuban. If you're a billionaire and you want to say, here's a few $1 million for crypto, so what? They do that all the time. Basically, most billionaires fall into the category of a venture capital guy. A venture capital guy is someone who says, give me 100 different potential investments. And I don't care if 99 of them fail, if the one that's successful is Facebook, if the one that's successful is Amazon. If you are a billionaire, you can do that. But when you're a kid taking everything you have and putting it into crypto, you're betting no different than throwing everything on the lottery, hoping there's enough people that want it that creates demand. And for every successful crypto story, there's 20 of them that are unsuccessful, that didn't go anywhere. And right now we're seeing it drop significantly. Now we don't know. It can go up tomorrow, it can go down tomorrow. There's nothing indicating this. On stocks are down, but history shows us that now is a good time to buy stocks in general. Because when it's down, they usually reverse. So smart investors are saying, okay, let me find businesses that are down, that are profitable, not speculative, and moving forward. Those are informed decisions. On crypto, there's no informed decisions to make. And so in this article on the Connecticut Mirror, we're talking about sports betting. And here's the issue with sports betting. On sports, you have more information than crypto. Deciding who's going to win a game, you have more information than you have on any Bitcoin or Ethereum or any cryptocurrency that's out there. You can analyze a game. Who's hot, who's not, which defense is good, which defense is bad. Now, anything can happen. If you watch football this weekend, which I think many are calling the greatest single weekend of football ever. Every game was won or lost in the last play. That Chiefs-Bills game was absurd. I don't know how the Bills lost to the Giants in Super Bowl 25 on a missed field goal, which is heartbreaking. To lose a game with 13 seconds to go, kicking off the ball, and allowing those 3 plays that they allowed in a field goal is so absurd. I have no idea how they sleep. No idea if they'll be able to sleep the rest of the year after that. Looks like the Giants are going to hire some of the Bills coaches. So not necessarily a bad thing, but just a crazy way to lose. But an amazing weekend of football. I didn't watch much of it this weekend, but over the last few days, I watched all the highlights on NFL Network. Holy cow. But there are many people who got all 4 of those games based on research. And the good thing about football is you can look through a whole weekend's worth of games, or basketball or baseball, and pick which games you think you have a better advantage based on looking at the fundamentals of the teams, the defense, the offense, or special teams. Are they their pace of play? Will they score over or under? I bet sports, and I'm probably winning at a 65% clip, which isn't incredibly profitable, but it's still okay. Why? Because I could analyze something. There's nothing to analyze with crypto. So now we have a hearing taking place on a committee in Connecticut on problem gambling, the revenues that came in. So here's the numbers so far. In less than 3 months of online gambling, Connecticut gamblers have wagered $2.6 billion. So we talk about people being broke. Connecticut, one of the smaller states in the country, 2.6 billion. Anybody tells me the rich can't be taxed more, I don't understand. I mean, there is so much money out there, it's not funny. They bet $325 million on sports, and get this, $2.3 billion on digital casino games. That's a slot machine on your phone. $2.3 billion, not sports betting. Now, we were always saying legalize sports betting, but sports betting was only a small fraction of it. We're finding out that 80% of that bet is playing whether 4 fruits will line up in a row on a slot machine on your cell phone. That's where Connecticut people are spending their money. At the end of the day, it's just crypto. It's just nonsense. Betting a game, I could study. Picking a stock, I can study. I can research. I can get better at it. You can't get better at a slot machine. Time doesn't make you better at a slot machine. You can't say, hey, listen, I've been doing slots for 40 years. I'm pretty good at it now. It doesn't happen. So at the end of the day, how is Connecticut deciding what they're going to look into? I'm looking to sports betting because a kid lost all his money betting football, but 85, 90% of the money being bet isn't on sports, which you can study and you can research, but it's on essentially the equivalent of crypto. Essentially, you're pressing a button to hope 4 apples or 12 stars or whatever line up. I've gone to the casino. I'm not a big person with the slots because they make no sense to me. It's fun as hell. Last time we went, we played. Oh crap! I forgot the name of the when we played, but it had Alice. I think Alice in Wonderland, the Yellow Brick Road thing. We played it with $100, and I think we went up to like 250. We're like, let's get the heck out of here, and we did. Then the next day we went and played another one. I don't know what it was. Like you just lost every single time. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it. Blackjack, I know that our odds are 53-48 against me. I know that. That's the way it is. There are some things, if you're going to count cards, if there's some place you're going to double down on a certain place, you know what the odds are. You can move them a little bit in your favor. Baccarat's about 50-50. There's a bunch of other games that you actually know your odds, that you're not just throwing money out there, but that's still basically just getting rid of money too. But stocks and betting on sports are very similar in that there's something to research. There's something to study. And you can buy or sell or stay away from stocks that are too close for comfort. And you can jump to stocks that you think you have an advantage. Same thing with a game. When you look on a list of 20 games, you can look at a game and say, okay, I'm going to stay away from that game. It's too close. I didn't bet any of the games last weekend in football because I looked at all of them and said, I have a friend of mine who bet all 4 and won all 4. Maybe he saw something I didn't. But the question when it comes to Connecticut is, if you're going to yell and scream about, let's have a hearing on sports betting because a couple of kids didn't know what they were doing, were out of control, and bet too much money, you have to start with what is the crypto equivalent of these slot machines. There's no rhyme or reason to these things. You're not going to win money. One person's going to win a fortune, everybody else is going to lose. They're nonsense. And it's the same thing with crypto. You buy a cryptocurrency, you may make a fortune, but 99% of people are likely going to lose unless some dream scenario takes place. So I always question this push. Oh, we need to rein this in, and we need to have a hearing on this. We need to look into sports betting. Sports betting is not the problem. The problem is you have basically glorified lotteries happening all over the place. We call it cryptocurrency. We call it slot machines that we have now legalized. But it's just lotteries. And it's not the kid who lost $5,000 that was in his bank account. It's the 70-year-old who spends their Social Security money constantly and doesn't have enough to pay for their Medicare supplement. That's the problem. When you legalize sports betting, you included slot machine play. You included the other fake nonsense in this, and those are the numbers where 80% of the betting, over 80% of the betting, is coming on that nonsense. The problem isn't sports betting. The problem is all the other nonsense that money's flowing into that the state doesn't say much about. We need to rein in sports betting. No. There's always going to be some bad users. There's going to be bad examples. You don't rein in driving cars because people have accidents. But when you allow people to go on their phone and bet $100 a slot play and then wonder why people have problems and then say, hey, it's the sports betting, you're crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Sports betting is fine. Betting on stocks, picking a stock, fine. There's plenty of information to look at in both of those examples that smart people can make wise decisions. Slot machines and crypto, same thing. You're just pulling a lever and hoping. No rhyme or reason to it. Connecticut should have legalized sports betting a long time ago. They should have thought twice about legalizing complete crapshoots on people's cell phones that they can bet hundreds of dollars a button. It's just crazy. Okay, that's my rant for today. I'm thinking Thursday, because I did get a few phone calls about the discussion about fields. Yesterday we talked about this, and We'll talk about it tomorrow. Now, here's the interesting aspects of fields in Brantford. So if you're not watching from Brantford, you may not be interested so much in this. But the fact of the matter is this. Fields, the school uses fields and the town uses fields. And I'm going to go off a little bit here. We talk about towns consolidating and working together. And legislators have worked very hard about towns trying to work together to form, coalitions to share services, right, to save money. It's all nonsense. If you really want to save money, you start consolidating the town and the Board of Education. You start with the obvious thing. Does it make sense that a town has to have a finance department and the Board of Education has to have a finance department? No. Does it make sense that the town has to have an insurance policy and the Board of Ed has a separate insurance policy? We can't put those together. No, it doesn't make sense. Does it make sense that the town has a human resources department and Board of Ed has a human resources department? No. We have 169 towns in Connecticut. Double that, and that's how many different finance departments we have in Connecticut. So that's the first issue. And the same thing also applies to fields. We have fields and these little control areas of, does the Board of Ed handle it? Does the superintendent handle it? Does the town have access to it? That's what needs to end. So while we have the Board of Education holding meetings and we have the town holding an ad hoc meeting, somebody has to wake up and say, wait a minute. It's probably got to be the Board of Ed that wakes up because they have legal control of it, but the town has money. So legal control of that field, they can say the town can't use it if they want to. They have a right to say that. However, they have to go to the town for the money to build a field. What they should be doing is saying, we're not having these meetings. We're not discussing any fields, any design aspects of it, nothing, until we have the town at the table to find out what the town needs, and then a plan to work with the town and the Board of Ed together to schedule use of these fields, to schedule maintenance of these fields. Because what we can't have is the town needs something, the Board of Ed says no, or the superintendent unilaterally says no. If he has or does not have that power, we don't know. If they're not going to work together, why are we having separate committees to do this? And to our legislators in Hartford who are saying we want towns to start working together, to hell with that plan. I don't care about towns working together. I care about within a town. Completely duplicate services are combined. Within a town, management of fields are managed by one committee, one group of people scheduling them. That within a town, the finance department is one department, not completely separate departments. That human resources is one department, not completely separate departments. Now, who does that negatively impact? Unions. And that's why this doesn't happen. So our legislators can say in Hartford all they want. Listen, we need you to consolidate. We need East Haven and Brantford to work together. We need Guilford and Madison to work together. We need Brantford and North Brantford to combine their public works. So they could say all that. What a great idea it would be if we combine resources. But when the Democrats in Hartford start saying, you know what? We're not giving any money to that town until the unions come together and allow us to reduce the staff by combining departments, then I'll take them seriously. Until then, there's no consolidation that'll take place. There'll be no shared services that'll take place. Mandate the unions come to the table and that we don't have duplicate services. It will save a fortune. Until that happens, all these conversations are crazy. In Brantford's case on fields, the Board of Ed can have this conversation till they're blue in the face. It doesn't make a difference. The process is where the Board of Ed comes up with what's called ed specs. We have our demands, but the money comes from this side. So you could demand all you want. If the money comes from this side, the people with the money have control. They have their own committee, the town, that's looking at town usage and needs. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it works long term, but it doesn't make sense for two different sides to have completely different meetings, then come together, one side hoping the other gives money to them without having a universal town-wide plan that combines the town needs and the Board of Ed needs. It doesn't make any sense. And we'll talk a little bit more about that probably on Thursday. Okay, that being said, thanks for joining me. Thanks for bearing with me. My head is actually a little better now, so maybe getting out a rant kind of helps a little bit. But thanks for joining. I'll do my best to be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. There's a chance tomorrow it'll be recorded and just posted at 4 o'clock. So based on some things I have, we're doing a lot more marketing stuff over the next 6-7 weeks here at Atticus News. And Atticus News, I may say this, Brantford 7 is the name of the website. Atticus News is the name of the company. It's news and marketing, and we are kind of converting to a full-fledged marketing company. If you know of a business that needs help, we have the ability to give a pretty big boost to businesses. Let me know. Send me a message. Send them a message. I'd be glad to sit down with anybody and have that conversation. For the money, for what we charge, you get a pretty good boost, and we have a pretty strong track record. So thanks again for joining us. We will be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Until then, have a great night.